Hi, I'm Mark Peikert, founder of Meet Me at Crafty, and you're joining us for another episode of Come Fly With Me here at the beautiful The Aviator on Melrose. And joining me today is VFX supervisor for TED Season 2, Hoyt Yeatman.
Thank you.
You're so much more than a VFX supervisor, though. I mean, my God, your filmography is insane.
Well, I'm one of two because Blair Clark is the main supervisor. He's the one that is the kind of lifeblood of TED.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And so I'm curious, like for Season 2, what was the conversation like?
On this season, there's just a lot of stuff. There's about 3,000 shots overall between all the episodes, so it's a lot.
I really feel like people outside of the VFX community are not understanding the sheer magnitude of what you guys accomplished for a series.
That's very true, because what happens is when you look at it, it just looks like a bear walking around doing stuff. You don't even think about it. He performs perfectly. He acts with everyone. Yeah,
it's just like amazing. A perverted Fozzie bear just wandering around.
Exactly.
But it's not. It's so much more difficult.
I know kids would love to see it, but they can't. It's really kind of funny, like that. Yeah, but it's really fun. Seth, has worked with his team for many years, right? And so that offers, I think, a certain amount of ability to be very flexible. I use the term jazz versus classical music. And what I mean by that is, when you do a lot of effect shots, you have to be very structured and you have to have everything written down, just like classical music. Every single note's put there. But on this, we kind of know the tune. And so he's able to be very fluid on stage, and we have 3 cameras running, and Seth voices Ted as the actors are working. Blair will do what we call a stuffy pass, which is where we have the little bear is set up, and he plays an actor in the sequence. So when they're blocking the shots like that, it's all part of the things. The camera operators are excellent. They are like human motion control systems. They sit down and they get there and they'll do the move, and then after that they have to pull the stuffy out, obviously. They do the sequence. The actors are excellent at looking at eye lines in the right place, which is half the trick. And then you'll get to comments where sometimes Seth will say, hey, you just clipped his head a little bit. Can you frame up a bit more? So he visualizes extremely well. So you don't really need to have a lot of the visual support that you have on other shows, because Seth is an animator, he knows visual effects, and he knows exactly what he wants.
Now tell me more about this stuffy. Is it TED-sized?
It's perfectly TED-sized, okay. Yeah. In some cases, when there's physical interaction, and if you look, there's a lot of it. People miss it out, right? Yeah. They actually he can come apart. There's a stunt TED. There's a one that's more of a proper primitive one. You can pull the arms off, things like that. So there's a lot of interaction that happens between the physical cast and this imaginary bear.
I mean, look, not to put too fine a point on it, but this season TED gets laid.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
You have to have a sexy TED this season, exactly. A sexy stuffy.
Exactly. No, it's really funny. I mean, many times it's hard not to laugh when you're sitting there in the scenes doing it. Yeah, and that's what makes it, I think, work. It's just like a normal character, right?
Plus, when you have Seth voicing it off.
Yeah, he has
camera.
A bunch of monitors and he's sitting there doing it.
It's so much. It's so many VFX shots for a show. Yeah. But also, it's a comedy.
Yes.
So it's also doing all of this for not like a scary monster.
No. And it has to be funny. And so a lot of it, how the timing is critical, right? Just like dribbling lines, but also the way that he moves or he looks and stuff like that. So again, that's where I think the keyframe animation really plays well, right?
What I really loved about Season 2 is after Season 1, no one said, okay, like we've established the world. We can pull back. We can scale back 10. We can scale back the animation a little bit. If anything, they doubled down.
They did, and we went into some unusual places, like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. It's just crazy stuff. And that's where I would help. I would do like all the environments and things like that, and just kind of covering all the other stuff that goes on, because it's supposed to take place in Boston. So every time you're driving or you're shooting locations, you have to get rid of all the palm trees, things like that. And then there was one sequence, which we'll probably talk a little later, about the Bill Clinton, which was very unique, and that was a kind of groundbreaking work that we kind of had to do to make it happen.
I mean, you turned Seth MacFarlane into Bill Clinton.
Yes, from the early 90s, yeah. So what happened there, he wanted to do the sequence. It's about 2.5 minutes long, about 38 shots. And it doesn't have Ted in it, but it's got it's got Maddie and Susan in it. And it's in a donut shop, right? He can't make ends meet, so they're both working a second job, right? The donut shop. Very, very funny, right? So when it came in, he said, look, I really need to make this look absolutely real, or it won't work. It just won't work, right? We had to kind of get a rough idea of where is Seth versus Bill Clinton. And to our horror, we went, oh my God, they're completely different.
No.
Yes, I mean, completely different. There was no way we could stick like makeup on, or even, they were all different. So we realized at that point that we're gonna have to do a head replacement. right? And so working with vendors, we talked about using CG, classic CG, and it's been done before, but really difficult, particularly on a television show, right? So we started looking at doing it full CG, taking the models that were built by the forensic sculptor, putting them together. We used basically 5 Venice cameras on set that were basically gen-locked together so that when they photographed Seth, who didn't have to wear any special makeup other than the traditional makeup he would normally wear, he wore his suit and things he had, worked inside with the other actors, and these cameras were free to move around by themselves, but there was a gentleman that had some really interesting technology that was able to triangulate all those 5 cameras into essentially a point cloud that in 3 space could capture his performance, because we weren't going to go back in there and try to do it by hand. We want to be able to take it automated so that Seth would physically drive the animation, which was successful. We got that to work. After several months of trying, we got really close, but we always had what I call the kind of uncanny valley, where it just didn't quite look real, right? And for this to really land, for the jokes to land, for it to be successful, it had to be real, right? You wouldn't want to look, oh, there he's a CG head on top of Seth, right? This wouldn't work. So at that point, I said, you know what, my son, who's going around and you're seeing all the TikToks and Instagram, and look at this guy, he's playing that. But most of that stuff you see in AI, they're what I call generative. In other words, the whole frame is generated from scratch, right? So it's much more convenient. Here we have a plate that was shot, we have a particular performance, right? We have particular lighting, we have interaction with camera motion, and so whatever we do, if we were to use AI, has to be faithful to all those different things. It's not like texting a prompt or reading a line into it. It doesn't do that. We have to have that performance.
It's just an additional tool
for
what you're already doing.
Exactly. So that was it. We were using it as a tool. So I chatted with Seth, saying I'm going to need some more firepower. And he said, do what you got to do, So anyway, so we got in there and we worked with a company called Deep Voodoo. And they're an AI visual effects house, excellent. And typically on what we would call deep fakes, which we've all seen, right, which has bad connotations, they would usually cast someone who has the physical body shape as particularly the face shape. And what you're doing is really just replacing the face. Now, that requires you to have good footage to train the model, right, which we didn't have. We had no video that works like that. And also, you need to be able to have a face or a substrate which matched, and Seth didn't. So in this case, we would have to lop the head off again as prescribed and come up with something that not only was the head, but also was the hair, which is very, it's a very classic point of his thing, right? And so in discussion with the guys over at Deep Voodoo, they had something in their back pocket they had been working on, never used before, and that was where we could actually completely replace the head with the AI head, and in case, keep all the lighting angles, keep the right focus of the performance. And what it was if you look around, it's a 1024 by 1024 square that's just around Seth. And so that way we could keep the resolution high enough for the 4K, because it's only a portion of the entire frame. And it worked perfectly. And it does what I call the heavy lifting. What it does is it doesn't understand like what's inside the mouth, the tongue. It doesn't know what language like. It doesn't know how the eyes are all moving, the subtle muscle movements. But a AI trained head does. And so it's incredibly powerful. Right? And so what it was able to do is to look at the actual performance, generate the look-like. We use things called LoRAs, which are low-order random adaptations, which is basically we had a model that understood how a human face looked, okay? But we didn't look like Bill Clinton. And so what we did is we took about 30 high-resolutional portraits from that time period, which were great, and then you train that AI model to understand not only the face, but how he should look. And then that is used and is driven by the AI. And the AI has to basically acquire the right camera positions, track it in 3D, has to use the lighting angles and things like that. And then once that element is generated, it is then composited in like a traditional thing. So it is exactly that. It is an elevated tool of technology. It's not a push button, hit prompt, and go.
I mean, what was the timeline to make this happen from start to finish?
The whole thing was about 10 months.
Oh my, for 2.5 minutes of footage.
Minutes, yeah, exactly. And so it was like, I go, oh no, we're not making it. I was just really freaking out. But afterwards, once we got it and we landed on a technique. But what I liked about it is that Seth got out in front and started talking about it. And I think he did a really good job, because it's not what most people are. I have a phrase, it's an AI filmmaker versus a filmmaker who uses AI.
Yes.
And typically an AI filmmaker is where 99% of the population is right now, which is where you can make, adaptations of characters and from prompts and from some images, and it's driven without any human real interaction. This is not that.
No.
This is driving it from a performance. It's the whole thing from the sculpt. It's definitely an artist-driven technology, but it has the added special lifting powers that we wouldn't have, right? It's very intelligent.
Well, as we wrap up, I'm curious,
Yeah.
when you're on set, the most important question that I ask of every interview, what is your go-to at craft services?
I don't know. I think iced tea to keep me awake.
I mean, look, as long as you don't say fruit. I don't believe the people who say fruit.
No.
I simply don't.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations again on
Well, thank you
season
very
2.
much.
It's really beautiful work, and it's even more convoluted than I realized.
Okay, well, good. Thank you
And I
very
do this
much.
for a living. Not like you do, but, And thank you for joining us, and tune in next week for another video.